What if Avengers Doomsday is actually a story where Doctor Doom is less of a villain and more a part of Steve Rogers' own master plan? In this video, we're going to explore the theory that Doomsday isn't an accident, but the result of a well-calculated plan in which Steve and Loki are working together. Because the chaos that the heroes and several Kong variants have created can only be cleaned up in one way. Maybe others are involved in this plan too, but the two main masterminds are Steve and Loki. It might sound odd, especially since most rumors revolve around Doom. But recently, the Russo brothers mentioned that Steve Rogers is the central figure of Doomsday. That gave me the chance to explore this angle, something I was already planning to present. So now you probably understand how interesting this is going to be. Let's dive in. First, let's talk about Steve's past. At the end of Avengers Endgame, we saw Steve go back in time and settle down with Peggy Carter. Officially, it was said that this was always the same timeline. But logically speaking, two Steves existing in one reality is a massive glitch. One Steve remains frozen in ice and wakes up in the 21st century, while another lives peacefully with Peggy in the 1970s. Now imagine how the presence and choices of these two versions could alter the flow of time. And then comes the third paradox, their child. A baby born from Steve and Peggy, living proof of a soldier's decision. A decision that, according to the rules of time, perhaps should never have happened. Steve's child wouldn't be just a normal human, but a walking incursion trigger, an entity standing as a bridge between two contradictory realities. And this is where the Ancient One enters. In Endgame, when Banner meets her, she clearly explains that if the Infinity Stones are left in the wrong timeline, the sacred flow will break. Alternate branches will form, and chaos will spread. In the official movie, we're only shown that Banner convinces her by promising to return the stones. But would a sorcerer who can see endless possible futures really agree so easily without a backup plan? Doctor Strange might be powerful, but the Ancient One was someone who chose her own destiny. In What If? We even saw her appear after death to guide and help Strange, though eventually, Supreme Strange surpasses her. My point is simple. After meeting Steve, the Ancient One must have seen possible futures as well. Perhaps she saw something wrong, something dangerous, and made a plan accordingly. Maybe she told Steve not to return fully to his original timeline, but instead to stay in the past with Peggy, because it would become part of a grand design. Steve followed her advice, lived his life with Peggy, and we caught glimpses of that in early Doomsday teasers and hints. Now, it doesn't have to be that everything happened solely because of the Ancient One. In the alternate timeline where Steve stayed and had a child, Loki might have played a massive role. Because without Loki, any timeline Steve tried to live in would have been pruned by the TVA. At the end of the Loki series, we saw him handling the tree-like structure of the sacred timeline, reshaping infinite multiversal branches. Loki has essentially become a god of stories, controlling narratives instead of ruling through power. If Loki exists outside of time, and Steve has stepped outside his own timeline as well, then their intersection feels completely logical. One is a soldier built on duty and sacrifice, and the other is a trickster god who has evolved into a cosmic storyteller. If these two join forces, then Doomsday might not be destruction. It might be the final correction of a broken multiverse. Together, they could create a story where, in order to fix the multiverse, they first have to let it break. Which means Loki and Steve may have secretly coordinated to allow the incursions to happen so that Doom would arrive. Even Steve's child could be part of their plan. Since Steve's son was born from two different timelines, he wouldn't just be triggering incursions. He would also become an attraction point for Doom. So Loki and Steve might have already set a trap for Doom as well. Now the obvious question arises, where does Dr. Doom come from? Official leaks and rumors already hint that RDJ's Doom sees the multiverse as an infection, an existence filled with unlimited realities, infinite variants, and endless suffering. For Doom, the perfect universe is one completely under his rule. No chaos, no chance, no unnecessary pain. And this is where Steve Rogers' perspective could align with his in a dangerously similar way. After Endgame, Steve witnessed that powerful beings like Thanos, Ultron, and even Loki failed to bring lasting solutions. After every victory, a new villain and a new war emerged. So maybe at some point, Steve reached the conclusion that as long as infinite possibilities exist, infinite tragedies will continue as well. For a soldier who has seen war in every era, that thought could weigh heavily. Steve and Loki didn't personally create Doom. They simply allowed his rise consciously. Because think about it. With Loki in control of the timelines, how could Doctor Doom become powerful enough to defeat Loki unless it was permitted? Is that really possible? Probably not. Just like in comics where heroes knowingly allow a threat to grow because they believe it may help defeat an even bigger danger later. Loki and Steve may have allowed the existence of someone who hates the multiverse, someone who would first become a dictator and then eventually shatter absolute control to create something better. In Steve's mind, Doom could be a necessary evil, someone he personally hates but strategically uses. Think of it like a chess player knowingly allowing the opponent to keep a powerful piece, only to sacrifice it later for a bold reset in the endgame. As I said earlier, Steve's child is special, an anchor for Doom. So he could also become the bridge that leads to Steve and Doom finally meeting, similar to how Susan and Doom were connected in the comics toward the end of Fantastic Four. I know what you're thinking. Doesn't this make Steve a monster, using his own child like a pawn? But remember, the person we're talking about here is Steve Rogers, not Captain America. Steve has made emotional mistakes before, like hiding the truth from Tony that the Winter Soldier, Bucky, killed his parents. Here too, Steve might initially support Loki. But once he hears Doom's true master plan, he might switch sides, allowing Doom to win so that Loki loses. And later, when Steve sees Doom's battle world and realizes there is no true freedom under his rule, he may begin plotting against him from the shadows, forming a new team that we could see in Secret Wars. If the MCU truly delivers such bold writing, Steve Rogers' return wouldn't just be a simple nostalgia bait. It would transform him into a mastermind no one ever imagined. Doom and Loki are already top-tier masterminds, and if Steve plays the game alongside them, it would be incredible to watch. After all, in the early glimpses of Doomsday, we didn't see Captain America will return. We saw Steve will return. Which means the Steve Rogers we meet in Doomsday might not be Captain America at all. Maybe he adopts a completely different persona, something unexpected for us. We could even see a story centered around Steve versus his own past decisions, filled with epic fight sequences, but at its core, exploring how Steve's choices ultimately played out. What do you think? Let us know in the comment section. See you in the next video with a brand new topic.